Welcome to the Takeoff Podcast, the go-to construction podcast for construction professionals seeking inspiration, education, or motivation for the next steps in their career. Each Monday, you'll be joined by me, Mick Donaghy, Managing Director of Gedden Executive Recruitment and a respected name from the industry. A construction leader, a business owner, or someone in the thick of the action. The whole premise of this podcast is for you to get something from it. An idea, a connection, a mentor, whatever it is, I hope you get it. And I hope you enjoy the show. Without further ado, let's get into it. Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of The Takeoff. Thank you for joining me. Just a bit of an update episode. It's been a really busy year. Can you believe that we are now 6 months into 2024? We've only got 6 months left, and even probably a bit less actually, until 2025, which is just absolutely insane. We're going to basically talk about some of the questions, some of the feedbacks we're getting on the show. We've been getting some amazing reviews recently. We've been getting some excellent communication from various different people within the market, within the industry. The podcast is expanding quite a lot at the moment, so we've had a lot of questions recently from different listeners who have basically asked certain questions around, how to find a job, internationally, what's better, working with a consultancy or a contractor, et cetera, et cetera. So I just want to jump into a bit of that today, just to continue to add value to our listeners of the show. We've recently had some great feedback as well from Lorna Lang. Lorna said, "This is my favorite podcast. Every episode shares insights from the insiders working on the front line. Love the show, Mick. Keep it up." And I would just ask anyone who's currently out there that is a listener, all your reviews really make a difference. It's something that is a labour of love. Doing the podcast, making sure that we're putting out content every single week, making sure that it is of high quality. And guys, I would love if you can give us some references or some reviews or some feedback. The more reviews that we get, the more 5 stars that we get, the more listeners that we get. The more listeners that we get, the more effort that we put into the podcast. It's simple as that. So anything that you can think of, would love to hear your feedback. So we've got some questions that have been submitted in, and I just want to tackle those today. So the first question is, how do I get a job internationally, whether that's Australia, New Zealand, the Middle East, or in the US? So I guess it's a very broad question, but typically what companies are looking for depends on the location. So I had a conversation this morning about chartered status and being a member of the RICS. That effectively has no bearing on your opportunity, I guess, ability to find a job in Australia, but that certainly would be imperative to have if you were based in the Middle East. There are different sort of, categories and different demands from each sort of geographical location. And ultimately, it really depends on where you're looking. So, for example, in the US at the moment, if you're a quantity surveyor, it's actually pretty much more common to find work if you're post-contract. So if you're in that sort of cost management, contract management side of things. But if you're or trying to find a job in Australia, the demand would be in pre-contract. So it would be in that sort of cost planning, in that sort of early stage or front end of quantity surveying. So it genuinely really depends. And so there isn't an all size fits all. You need to look at the location of where you're looking to work. You're nearly looking at what the demands are in that location, how the economy is performing. Each location has different demands. Obviously we see what's going on with NEOM in Saudi, what's going on with the, data center and chip development work in the US. There's different things that you need to consider in each location. So I would say it's probably a bit too broad to give an exact answer, but I would say do your research, find out a little bit more about what's been successful there in the past. Second question is consultancy or contractor, which one is better? Again, super broad. But it's a question that I'm always getting from listeners of the show. Again, it depends. How long's a piece of string? What is it you're looking for in your life? There is a general sort of theme that working in a contractor means that you're going to work more hours compared to a consultancy. I think, to be honest, that's a little bit of an old school way of looking at it. I do think contractors are offering, a lot of work-life balance. The likes of, if you're looking at the biggest, tier 1 contractors in the market, John Holland, Lend Lease, Multiplex, they're really family friendly in most cases. They offer, really good work-life balance. They're aware that they are a big corporate business, and big corporate businesses typically have to, tick that diversity box, tick that inclusion box, and so they offer loads of perks in that space. Consultancies, I know some consultancies where those people who are in there are working 60, 70 hours a week, because of the structure of a consultancy business being billable hours. So honestly, it really, really depends. Typically, you earn more money in a contractor, but in some cases, depending on the type of consultancy, you can typically offer some high-level expertise from a consultancy or commercial advisory point of view, from an expert witness point of view. Again, it totally depends. But one common theme that I see most of all is that you don't see many consultancy candidates going into contractor, but you do see more contractor candidates going into consultancy. And that to me would indicate that contractor candidates are in more demand than they are consultancy candidates. You also see more contractor candidates getting into the consultancy environment, probably sort of 20, 25 years down the line, because they want a bit more, something different. They want to experience something different. Question 3, what are the most in-demand skills for success? Again, how broad is that? I mean, it's super, super broad, but if you're a listener of the show, you see one common theme constantly within construction being the main skill set for success, and that is the ability to communicate, the ability to influence, the ability to develop relationships, the ability to negotiate and win work. That communication piece, that personal aspect of construction is nearly the most in-demand skill across the board, whether you're an estimator, quantity surveyor, contract manager, whatever it might be. Being able to communicate effectively is the number one skill set that you can invest in. Technical skill sets, who knows where the world is going to go, with AI, with all of the stuff that we're currently seeing, changing the landscape. So, being an expert might not be what it used to be in the future, because all of this information is literally going to be within seconds away. We're at the literal infancy of AI. So where's that going to be in 10 years' time? So if we can get expert advice within seconds, what is going to make you different? So I would say investing in your communication skills. Go to different networking conferences. Get online, join mastermind groups. Go to some of those allocution lessons or whatever it might be. How to speak in front of live audiences. All these types of things really will massively improve your communication skills. I can say since starting a podcast, my ability to communicate has gotten a lot better, and I don't fear communication in any way. And the ability to sort of listen, understand, respond, it's certainly very, very important. So I would absolutely 100% say invest in your communication skills. This one's more of a sort of, recruitment-based question. Why retaining talent is better than hiring it? Well, I mean, simple, because it takes less time. It's less, it's more difficult to train someone than it is to upskill someone. Always time consuming. It's, expensive. You'll have clients who will be used to working with one person. All of a sudden, they're working with another person. It looks bad for business. Retaining talent is so, so important. And quite often, it's not something that is at the forefront of many construction companies' minds, because, construction's so difficult. Construction is challenging. There's so many different things going on constantly. So that's something to think about. Retaining talent, I think it's sort of, every acquisition is potentially like a 40% loss. So, if you think about someone moving into another or bringing someone in, you're going to have to pay a recruitment fee. It might take you 2 or 3 months to actually find someone. So you've got that lost revenue. Then the time to train them. It's a really, really heavy exercise. So it's something to really focus on, how to get the best out of your team and how to make sure your team is continuously happy. Right, guys, so I'm absolutely pumped to say the Takeoff podcast is proud to be sponsored by RIB Software, the company behind some of the leading estimating software in the entire planet, including Costex, Candy, CX, and more. So firstly, if you didn't know, RIB are a powerhouse at providing innovative software solutions to the construction and engineering markets. They have over 500,000 users globally and are known universally as a solution provider for your entire project lifecycle, from planning to construction and beyond. RIB solutions help to ultimately connect people, processes, and data, so your project comes within budget, on time, and to the quality desired, all whilst reducing your business's carbon footprint. All this stuff matters, and RIB has the solutions. So if you're interested in finding out more, get on over to rib-software.com, reach out to your local team and quote Takeoff Podcast. For every listener who buys a subscription of RIB Costex, they will provide one free online training course. Okay, guys, back to the episode. Number 5, what I think about the recent migration changes and how will that affect the construction sector. So there's been a big change. I think it's a 485 visa, which is the student visa, which means that anyone who came to Australia who studied and worked as, who studied as a graduate of construction management or quantity surveying or something like that, they were able to work in the industry for 2 years full time upon graduation. That's now changing, and I'm seeing the ramifications of that. I'm having, tens or nearly hundreds of candidates all over Australia contact me looking for sponsorship now, which is just so hard to find. So it's going to make a big change, and I'm wondering, is it Australia sort of cutting its nose off despite its face? The university market in Australia, I think, is either the number 2 or number 3 biggest importer or biggest revenue generator. So it's a massive industry in Australia. So I'm just not too sure whether those candidates who might be in India, the UK, might be in China, start to look at, well, then if I'm not going to be able to find permanent work after I get my diploma or my degree, am I better going to a different country? And so is that going to even widen the talent shortage even more? Number 6, will AI replace some roles in construction? I think that's probably, undeniable. It certainly will. What it changes, I'm not too sure. Construction is a really clunky industry. It doesn't change that often. I obviously had an episode I published last year being really, concerned for the industry as a whole. I still am. I'm not too sure how many of the listeners, use WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram. Now we're seeing AI just built into that, and we're the early stages in that. Like, that's going to be built into absolutely everything. That's going to be built into our CRMs. That's going to be built into our emails. It's literally going to be an assistant for everything. So, if I worry for consultancy firms a bit more than contractors, because contractors are just so, old school, but consultancy firms, there's certain things that from an advisory point of view, from a legality point of view, will stakeholders get access to that, quite easily from an AI perspective. If AI is keeping up to date, within a few months of current times, from legal standpoints, contract standpoints, it's going to be interesting to see how all that plays out. So yeah, AI is certainly going to change a lot within construction, but it certainly won't replace the workers of the industry. It won't replace the form workers, the carpenters, the guys and girls are doing the work, which is ironic, isn't it? It's funny, I think we've got to be open-minded to AI. It certainly, we've went through, different revolutions in the past, the Industrial Revolution. There's been a whole bunch of different things that have come in. Only 20, 30 years ago, we started using mobile phones. So it's interesting. We'll have to keep an eye on it. And I do think it's going to change, but how fast it's going to change, I'm not too sure. Number 7, what do I do when I get laid off? So obviously lots of layoffs at the moment, universally and globally. Obviously, construction in Australia is different, sort of state by state. So I mean, what do you do when you get laid off? I guess don't lose hope. First of all, I think it's important that you keep positive. I think it's important that you remain in the game as such. I honestly think investing in your personal brand is so important. Because when you do end up laid off, or there's some sort of situation which is affecting you negatively, your personal brand really does sort of stand out at that point. If you're someone who's maybe sort of flew under the radar, done a good job, but if you've got someone who's done equally that, but has a personal brand as well, who's probably going to find the job opportunities quicker? It's probably that person with the personal brand. So you don't realize how much publishing content, getting your face out there, is going to come back to you from a reward perspective. Even this podcast, I'll reach out to a candidate, and there will be listeners of the show who'll say, "Oh, I listened to your show, and keen to have a chat, etc., etc." So it's important. It's important to invest in it, and it's something that you can invest in over time. That will actually, you'll see some monetary and tangible, result. It's not like, maybe if you do a degree, sometimes you might spend 60 grand doing it or something like that, and then all of a sudden, is it really giving you that immediate uplift? Publishing content, getting your face out there for free, and I honestly think you'd make more money and make more tangible growth investing in your personal brand than you would, maybe doing a university course. Is there any real growth potential for QS estimators? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, where do you start? Such a in-demand role, such a low supply role, and yeah, there's huge opportunity. But again, it depends where you are in the world. It depends what you do. Sometimes you have to take a few risks. I had someone in my WhatsApp group recently ask me how to go from specializing in waterproofing to being in a commercial contractor, and that isn't a one move. That's probably a two moves. So you probably need to go from waterproofing to maybe plumbing or building services, into fit out, then into commercial. So your dream job isn't always one job away. It might be 2 or 3 jobs away. So that's something that you've got to strategize about. But yeah, there's huge potential in quantity surveying and huge potential in estimating. My opinion is that estimating in Australia has more growth, has more opportunity to earn, because quantity surveying is more pre-contract focused, and there is I guess there's a ceiling. There's a ceiling in quantity surveying when there isn't a ceiling as much in an estimating role. To give you an example, interviewed a candidate on Monday in Sydney. Candidate was on 400,000, and he was saying he was hiring people on his team who had 4 years experience on 200,000. So I mean, there's just no way QS earns that money. No chance, unless they're an executive director with a big firm and they're making 100K in bonus a year, maybe even a bit more than that. It's very, very hard for them to warrant that. And the reason for that is because of the billable hour structure. The billable hour structure is tough, because you've then, if you're a 400K overhead, you've got to be able to bring in significantly more than that for that to be profitable for the business. And I'm also, when I'm talking about a QS in Australian terms, that's a PQS globally. So that's a professional QS. Of course, if you're working as a project quantity surveyor, you've got opportunity to move into commercial management, commercial director, CFO, who knows. So yeah, massive opportunity in that space as well. What are the most valuable certifications for different specializations within construction? I mean, I think, that if I'm looking at this really specifically, the things that you really want to get a bit of insight into is, say if you're in the Middle East and you're coming into Australia, the big demand for QSs or estimators is specific software experience. So it might be Cost Tax, or sponsors of the show. It might be, something like different, like an expert or something specific to that. I would more focus on learning skill sets, learning different software programs, because certifications, yes, it's maybe worthwhile to have on a capability statement or something like that, but they aren't viewed as relevant as it would be maybe if you were in the UK or Ireland or the Middle East, where having chartered status is definitely a benefit. Being chartered in Australia is effectively, I'm not going to say worthless, but it doesn't give you any tangible growth from a monetary perspective, or even applying for jobs. To be honest, it's a nice to have, but it's definitely not a need to have. So I would say focus more on soft skills, focusing on communication, focusing on negotiation skills, focusing on personal brand, and then focus on some of those technical specifics, such as, what software that you can maybe get exposure to, different areas of the market, different types of contract standards, that sort of thing. Number 10, I want to quit. When is it okay to resign? Whenever you want to. Resigning can be challenging. You might be in a business for 5-10 years, and you might build really good relationships with your hiring managers. Quite often, the people that we work with become friends, so it can be a really awful thing to go through. Resigning, but if you want to quit, then that's the right answer. There's a really good podcast episode by a guy called Brian Buffini. He's an Irish guy who lives in America and has built the biggest real estate training company in the world. And he has a great episode called "The Power of a Made Up Mind." And once you've made up your mind, anything's achievable. But if you've made your mind up to quit, then you should quit. That's just the reality of it. If you're not sure about quitting, then that's a different question entirely. So, when you're ready to quit is when you're ready to resign. That number 11. Can I transition from a different industry into construction? It's tough to do so. You sometimes see it. You can do anything if you want to. Again, moving back to the power of a made up mind. Most normally you would see, maybe moving from finance into construction. That's a typical sort of construction route, say, for quantity surveyors or estimators. You'll maybe see someone who's done, a year working as an accountant, maybe moves into estimating. Sometimes you see maybe someone who's worked in a couple of years in procurement or buying or something like that, moves into construction. Or the other one is maybe working in construction law, maybe the legal side, the contract side, getting into construction. They're the most normal ways of getting in. Do I see, those maybe coming from a completely different industry like fashion, or, going in from, I guess tech development or something like that? I don't really see it that often. Can you do it? Yes, it's possible, but what you do probably needs to be related to what you've done in the past. So, as an example, if you're in, IT or tech, I would probably think, what can I utilize that skill set into construction? Maybe it's more moving into the design elements. Maybe it's starting off as a Revit drafter or getting into design coordination or something like that. So it really, really depends on what you do and on what your business is about. Guys, I'm interrupting this podcast today to give you some information as to what I actually do every single day. So I own and operate a business called Get In Executive Recruitment. We're a specialist boutique recruitment company, and we specialize purely in the pre-construction and commercial construction markets globally. We're really well known and respected for our work in estimating, cost management, quantity surveying, and contract administration. Because we're hyper niche, we don't have millions of candidates. We don't really even have thousands, but more times than not, we have the right candidate for the right job at the right time. Unlike a lot of recruitment agents out there, we are super experienced in what we do. We understand the market, we understand what makes our clients tick and our candidates tick too. Each and every single assignment we work on undergoes an extensive executive search process. It's robust and it works 100% of the time. We've also got a team of 5 researchers who map our markets out globally within our niche. They're amazing. They allow us to work fast, which saves our clients time and money too. So if you're interested in our process, drop us a message. Now back to the episode. Is college necessary to get a job in construction? No. I would say you can go down the trade route. That's equally just as a good way of getting into the industry. You don't need to have a university degree to get into construction. And more, we're seeing companies, favor a trade qualification over even a chartered qualification. It's absolutely crazy, but that's the way of the construction industry in Australia and New Zealand. How can I get more interviews through LinkedIn? Again, personal brand. I'd probably say personal brand is the quick answer for that one. When people know who you are, when people, when employers are saying that you get loads of good engagement, that you communicate effectively, you respond to comments well, that you are a clear communicator, that you're someone who's out there networking. That's how you get more interviews. I mean, I could literally put a full sort of 2 hour piece of how to get more interviews. I mean, everything starts with being niche. Everything starts with, knowing your market intrinsically, putting excellent content out there, making sure that you've got a CV that is super detailed, that, it goes through everything with a fine toothpick. There's so many different things that you consider, but as a big sort of generalization, you get more interviews because when more people know who you are, and more people will know who you are when you've got a better personal brand. I just graduated out of university. How can I get an entry level job? Yeah, so I mean, I get chastised for saying this, but like literally it works, and people don't want to do it anymore because people are too precious today, and people are too, I guess, above themselves to go out and do the hard work. But the way that you go get a job is you knock on doors. And what does knocking on doors mean? You can look at that as a physical knocking on doors, or literally a virtual knocking on doors. But I have posted about this numerous times in the past, and I have had some sensationally experienced people, directors of Lend Lease and Tier 1 contractors, and really, really experienced people saying, I got my first job because I walked up to a construction company, I rapped their door, I introduced myself, I had a CV to hand, and I said, could I speak to the hiring manager? And that was my first way in. And you maybe start off and you maybe say, hey, can I do 2 days a week for free? Can I just learn from people around here? I constantly keep seeing, young 20-year-olds saying, hey, I want work-life balance. And I just sort of go, well, I mean, like, get work-life balance when you've actually got experience. Like, how can you get work-life balance when you don't have any experience? It's a bit of a nonsense. And maybe I sound a bit old school about this, but genuinely, how I would focus on busting a gut to get experience, to make people know who I am, to get respected, to get trusted. And then from there, whenever you've got, 5, 10, 15 years in the bank, then you start looking at work-life balance. There's plenty of time for that. But I mean, are you going to finish every day at 3, 4 o'clock? You're in the wrong industry. Construction is tough. Get out there. If you're wanting to actually succeed in construction, work-life balance won't exist for the first 5 years of your career. Go and learn from people. Go and really enjoy yourself by learning from people and build those friendships and networks, and enjoy your life through your work. If you're looking at this as going, oh, this is a job and I hate this, then maybe you're in the wrong industry. Maybe you need to think about doing something else, but you really should be getting some fulfillment from your work, where you don't need to be thinking, I hate this. I need to, spend 7 hours a day, at a spa or, in the gym or something like that, So work-life balance should be a myth in your 20s. Sorry if I'm offending anyone. Number 15, final question. Is it possible to work remotely as a quantity surveyor or estimator? Short answer, yes. Is it likely? Depends. Is it common? No. Most likely when you're freelancing, to be honest. Most companies nowadays, contractors are like literally putting everyone back into the office. Sometimes they might offer 1 or 2 days a week working from home for an estimator. For QSs, I mean, it's irregular. Sometimes it can come, sometimes these businesses are just trying to attract, young talent and pay them cheap, but offer them 2 days a week from home. That's common. Can you get a fully remote job? It's uncommon in Australia and New Zealand, but it's more common in the US. In the US, they're really open to it, and it's because the country's so big. The projects might be based, 10 hours away. From 10 hours drive, it could be a 4-hour flight, and so there is a lot more remote working. But it isn't as common in Australia and New Zealand. It's possible, but I think you'll more likely find it as an estimator. I think 1 to 2 days a week is a good mix at this current time. I think there's more of a trend of bringing everyone back into the office. So that is the 15 questions I've been presented. And guys, I hope that's been a bit of value for you. Just a little bit of an update on the market, what's been going on. Super interesting time. Can't believe we're literally nearly into July, and that's nearly the end of the financial year, which is absolutely nuts. So, guys, if you've got any more questions you'd like me to answer, send them through to us. It's been a pleasure, and let's get into the new year and the new financial year. Let's hit our goals. Let's smash it, and speak to you soon. Before you go today, guys, I'm just going to ask you to do one thing. Can you please go to Apple right now or Spotify right now and just give us those 5 stars? Hit that 5-star button. It makes such a difference you wouldn't believe. The whole idea of this show is to inspire, educate, and motivate our listeners. And we only do that if we're getting the best guests. The best guests want to see data. They want to see information. They want to see how many listeners that we get. And so all of this stuff is really, really important. So if you can just literally go and do that today, if you enjoy the show, just go and hit that 5-star button. It makes such a difference. I hope you've enjoyed the show. We're going to continue to push this out there every Monday. So if you can, hit that 5-star button. And if you can't, even share it with a friend. Go on to WhatsApp, flick it on to your crew. Guys, thank you so much for listening. On to next week.